She donated blood to a dying stranger mid-flight, unaware he was a Korean billionaire CEO. The air in the cabin always felt stale by hour 10. That recycled oxygen that never quite filled the lungs properly. 35,000 feet above the Pacific, halfway between Seoul and New York, Amara Williams shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her feet already swollen inside her boots. The glamour of international travel had faded somewhere around her 100th flight as a medical device consultant. Her role taking her across continents more often than she saw her own apartment in Brooklyn. That day, she was running on 4 hours of sleep and her third cup of bitter airline coffee. Her Kindle remained unopened as she gazed out the window, mind wandering elsewhere. Bills piling up despite her decent salary. Her mother's upcoming surgery. The apartment lease she couldn't afford to renew on her own after her roommate bailed. Amara was adjusting her neck pillow when urgent commotion erupted several rows ahead. Flight attendants moved quickly, professional smiles never slipping as their pace accelerated. A crowd gathered around a seat in the center section. "He just collapsed," someone whispered as Amara approached. He was fine 1 minute, then clutching his chest the next. On the floor lay an Asian man, perhaps in his late 30s. Even unconscious, there was something striking about him. Sharp features, immaculately tailored clothes now rumpled as he lay awkwardly between seats. His complexion had gone gray, a sheen of cold sweat on his forehead. "Is there a doctor on board?" A flight attendant called out, voice steady despite the obvious urgency. A middle-aged woman pushed forward. "I'm a doctor," she said, already reaching for the man's wrist to check his pulse. Her frown deepened as she examined him, barking questions about the in-flight medical kit. What happened next existed in Amara's memory as a series of sharp, disconnected images. The doctor's grim face as she assessed his condition. The captain's voice over the intercom asking if any passengers had type AB negative blood. The strange silence that followed when no one volunteered. "I'm AB negative," Amara heard herself say, though she hadn't consciously decided to speak. Universal recipient. The rarest blood type. Her grandmother always called it her hidden superpower. The doctor looked up at her, relief and doubt warring on her face. "You're sure?" Amara nodded. She'd donated enough times to know. "It's dangerous," the doctor warned. "We don't have proper equipment for a transfusion." "What's dangerous is doing nothing," Amara replied, already rolling up her sleeve. "He'll die, won't he?" The doctor didn't answer, which was answer enough. 20 minutes later, Amara watched her blood flow through a makeshift transfusion setup into the veins of a complete stranger. The doctor had improvised with the emergency medical kit and some supplies from a medical researcher who happened to be traveling in business class. As her blood left her, Amara felt lightheaded, but refused to look away from the man whose life she was quite literally pouring into. His breathing seemed less labored now. She noticed his watch. A limited edition timepiece worth more than 6 months of her salary. His hands were uncalloused, nails perfectly manicured. A man who had never known physical labor. She wondered what his name was, where he was going, who would miss him if he died on this plane, somewhere between worlds. She never expected to see him again. If you've ever wondered what would happen if fate brought two people together at 40,000 feet, you'll want to stay for this entire story. Hit like now if you believe in life-changing coincidences, and subscribe to hear more incredible true stories every week. A week passed. Amara flew from New York to London, London to Dubai, Dubai back to New York. The rhythm of airports and cabin pressure changes, of time zone adjustments and hotel rooms that all looked the same after a while. The incident with the mysterious passenger faded into the background noise of her life. One more strange encounter in a career built on fleeting international connections. Until the flowers arrived. Amara was just waking up from a nap, trying to reset her body clock, when her doorbell rang. Outside stood a delivery man struggling under the weight of the most extravagant arrangement she'd ever seen. White peonies and blue delphiniums, arranged in a spiral pattern like the turbulence of air currents. "Amara Williams?" he asked, checking his tablet. "There must be a mistake," she said. "Nobody sent arrangements like this to a one-bedroom apartment in Bedford-Stuyvesant." "No mistake," he insisted, handing her the tablet to sign. "Special delivery, Premium service. After he left, Amara searched for a card among the blooms. She found it nestled in the center, heavy cream-colored stationery, sealed with actual wax, like something from another century. Inside, in perfect calligraphy, was a simple message. Thank you for your gift of life. A life debt can never be repaid, but I shall try. No signature. But tucked into the envelope was a small velvet box containing a diamond-studded airplane pin, tiny but flawless stones catching the light from her kitchen window. Amara called the flower shop, but they refused to reveal the sender's information. Client confidentiality, they said. She tried the airline next, asking about the passenger who collapsed on flight KE-082, but privacy regulations prevented them from sharing passenger information. The pin sat on her dresser, glittering accusingly every morning as she dressed for work. She should have followed her gut instinct and sold it. Gifts from strangers felt like obligations, especially something so obviously expensive. But something stopped her, a curiosity that burned hotter than her practical nature could extinguish. Who was he? Why the secrecy? And why did she feel a strange disappointment that he hadn't included his name? 3 weeks later, Amara was boarding a flight to Tokyo for a medical conference when she felt someone watching her. She turned from stowing her carry-on to find herself staring into eyes she recognized, though she'd only seen them closed in unconsciousness. "Hello, Amara," he said, and the sound of her name in his mouth sent an electric current down her spine. He shouldn't have known her name. They hadn't been introduced while he was sprawled unconscious on the cabin floor. "How are you feeling?" she managed, trying to calm her racing heart. "Alive," he said simply. "Thanks to you." Up close, fully conscious and impeccably dressed in what she now recognized as a handmade suit, he was even more striking. His features had a sharpness to them, like they'd been carved from stone by someone with an eye for beauty but no interest in softness. "The flowers were unnecessary," Amara said quietly, aware of other passengers boarding. "As was your blood," he countered. "Yet here we are." He introduced himself as Ji-hun Park. The name meant nothing to Amara then. She didn't follow business news or tech innovations. She didn't know she was speaking to the CEO of Skyline Technologies, a man whose net worth exceeded the GDP of several small nations. "I'd like to thank you properly," he said as they took their seats, coincidentally adjacent in business class. "Have dinner with me in Tokyo." "I don't even know you," she replied automatically. "Most worthwhile relationships begin that way," he said with the confidence of a man unaccustomed to hearing no. Amara should have declined, should have maintained boundaries, should have recognized the warning signs of a power imbalance that could swallow her whole. Instead, she found herself standing outside an unassuming restaurant in Tokyo the following evening, wondering what madness had possessed her to accept his invitation. The restaurant, she would later learn, was rated among the world's best. Impossible to get reservations unless you were, well, him. The elderly chef greeted Ji-hun with a deep bow and Amara with curious eyes that lingered on her dark skin with undisguised interest before he led them to a private dining area. Over traditional dishes she'd never experienced before, Ji-hun Park told her nothing and everything about himself. He spoke of his company in broad terms, of his travels, of his appreciation for courage in unexpected circumstances. What he didn't mention: his wealth, his power, the empire he had built from his father's already substantial foundation. Amara spoke of her work in medical device sales, her mother's illness, the satisfaction of helping hospitals across different countries implement technologies that saved lives. What she didn't mention: the loneliness of constant travel, the bills, the way she often felt like an outsider in every country she visited, including her own. "Why did you help me?" he asked as they finished their meal. "You risked your health for a stranger." The question caught Amara off guard. "You needed help," she said simply. "I could provide it." "Most people calculate the cost before offering assistance," he replied, studying her with unnerving intensity. "Maybe you've been surrounded by the wrong people," she said, then immediately regretted her boldness. But Ji-hun didn't take offense. Instead, he laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his serious face into something approaching boyish. "Perhaps I have," he agreed, and for a moment, the vast gulf between their worlds seemed to narrow. "Would you have accepted that dinner invitation?" Comment below what you would do in Amara's shoes. Don't forget to subscribe for next week's video where we'll share another incredible chance encounter that changed someone's life forever. After that night, Ji-hun Park began appearing in Amara's life with a frequency that defied coincidence. Suddenly, he was on her flights, always booked in business class, always seated where they would interact. Each time, their conversations remained friendly but probing, with a current of awareness that made her skin tingle. The gifts continued. A rare art book delivered to her apartment. A silk scarf in vibrant colors that complemented her skin tone. An invitation to a tech conference where his company was unveiling some revolutionary product. Amara's roommate Tasha warned her as she helped unpack yet another mysterious delivery. "You know what they say about billionaires," she said, examining the art book with barely concealed envy. "They don't date regular women. They just collect interesting experiences." Her words stung because they echoed Amara's own doubts. She'd grown up watching powerful men treat women who looked like her as exotic adventures rather than equal partners. The daughter of educators from Detroit, she'd fought for every opportunity, every accomplishment. She didn't want to be anyone's cultural souvenir. "It's not like that," Amara insisted, though she couldn't articulate what it was. Not quite friendship. Certainly not romance. Something undefined, built on the strange foundation of her blood now flowing through his veins. Then came the offer she couldn't rationalize away, a consulting position for his company's new medical division. "The salary is triple what you currently make," said the sleek HR representative who contacted her. "Plus accommodation allowances for international travel." Amara should have asked more questions. Should have wondered why a man like Ji-hun Park was so interested in a woman like her. Should have considered what people would assume about their relationship. But her mother's medical bills were mounting, and her own dreams of advancement seemed increasingly distant on her current path. She accepted the position, telling herself it was a career opportunity, nothing more. The first time Amara entered Skyline's gleaming headquarters in Seoul, all glass and steel and stunning views of the city, she still believed she could keep her emotional distance. She was a professional, after all. This was simply a job with better pay and perks. That illusion shattered somewhere during her third week, as she and Ji-hun worked late reviewing prototype designs. Most evenings, Ji-hun worked intensely, barely acknowledging her presence as they analyzed data and specifications. But as midnight approached, he set aside his tablet and joined her at the window where she was stretching her cramped shoulders. "You're exhausted," he observed. "So are you," she countered, more comfortable with him than she should have been. "I never sleep well during product launches," he admitted, then smiled ruefully. "Ironic, given how many I've overseen. You built a global tech empire but still worry about each release?" "I worry about whether what we create actually improves lives," he clarified. "The profit is merely necessary." There was something vulnerable in his expression that Amara hadn't seen before, a crack in the perfectly controlled facade. "The incident," she began hesitantly, "on the flight when we met, was that the first time it happened?" He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "No, I have a condition. A rare blood disorder that sometimes causes acute episodes, especially under pressure changes." "That's why you were flying commercial that day," she realized. "Medical personnel on board." He nodded. "My doctor advised against private flights for long distances. Too isolated if something went wrong." His eyes met hers. He was right. The confession changed something between them. No longer benefactor and recipient, but two humans acknowledging vulnerability. He asked about her mother's condition, listened intently as she described the treatments needed. Amara found herself sharing struggles she typically kept hidden. The weight of being her mother's only support, the dreams she deferred, the exhaustion of code switching between worlds. As the city lights sparkled below them, he moved closer to her by the window. "I've built technologies that connect people across the globe," he said softly. "None have connected me like chance did with you." When he kissed her, Amara told herself it was the exhaustion making her lightheaded, the stress affecting her judgment. Anything but the truth, that she was falling for a man whose world would never fully accept someone like her. His lips were warm, his touch careful, as though she might break or disappear. When they separated, the look in his eyes, wonder mixed with confusion, mirrored her own feelings exactly. "This complicates things," he whispered. Amara almost laughed at the understatement. "Everything about you is complicated." In the weeks that followed, Ji-hun began sharing his world with her bit by bit. She attended business functions on his arm, learned the vocabulary of venture capital and technological innovation, met colleagues who regarded her with curiosity or barely concealed disdain. In turn, she showed him parts of New York he'd never experienced on his business trips, introduced him to soul food and jazz clubs, taught him about cultural nuances his global business acumen had somehow missed. Each crossing of their worlds felt like a small victory against the invisible barriers between them. Each private moment, his hand finding hers under a restaurant table, his voice soft in the darkness of hotel rooms, convinced Amara that perhaps the impossible was possible after all. Then she met Chang Ho-yoon. He appeared at a corporate gala in Singapore, immaculately dressed and radiating the same aura of wealth and power as Ji-hun, but with none of the warmth she discovered beneath Ji-hun's reserved exterior. From the moment Chang Ho spotted them together, his eyes never left Amara, calculating, assessing, dismissing. "So this is your new project," he said to Ji-hun in Korean, clearly assuming she couldn't understand the deliberate insult. What he didn't know was she'd been studying the language intensively since joining Skyline. Ji-hun's posture stiffened. "Amara is my guest, Chang Ho. You'd do well to remember that." "Of course," Chang Ho replied with a smile that never reached his eyes. "How fortunate that your medical emergency yielded such an exotic savior. One might almost call it strategic." Before Ji-hun could respond, Chang Ho turned to Amara directly. "You must be so proud, being associated with Skyline's great innovation. Ji-hun's new medical technology will revolutionize treatment for blood disorders. Quite a coincidence that he found someone with your particular blood type, exactly when the project needed positive publicity." Ice formed in Amara's stomach. "Medical technology?" "Chang Ho," Ji-hun warned, but the damage was done. "Oh, he hasn't told you?" Chang Ho's surprise was theatrical. "The transfusion system your heroic actions helped test? It's the centerpiece of our new biomedical division. Your little mid-air drama has already improved our stock price by 8%. Amara looked at Ji-hun, waiting for him to deny it, to explain. The muscle working in his jaw told her everything. "Excuse me," she managed, walking away with as much dignity as she could muster while her world tilted on its axis. Ji-hun found her on the hotel balcony 20 minutes later, after she'd swallowed back enough tears to face him without breaking. "It's not what you think," he began. "What exactly do I think?" Her voice sounded foreign to her own ears, hard and cold. "That I sought you out because of the technology. That this us has been about business. Hasn't it?" she asked. "The gifts, the job offer, all coincidentally as your company launches a medical device related to blood transfusions?" "I'm not as naive as I look, Ji-hun. The technology existed before I met you," he said, running a hand through his usually perfect hair. "Yes, it's designed to make emergency transfusions safer, especially in remote locations. But it was already in development when I boarded that flight. So meeting me was just a happy accident for your marketing department?" Amara couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. "Meeting you was the most important accident of my life," he said quietly. "But not for the reasons you think." Before he could elaborate, his phone buzzed with what she knew was his urgent notification tone. He checked it and his expression darkened. "We have a situation I need to handle," he said. "Please, wait until I can explain everything." But by morning, the explanation Amara was waiting for had been overshadowed by a more immediate crisis. Photos of them had hit the tabloids. Not just any photos, intimate moments captured by telephoto lenses. Ji-hun and Amara entering his Seoul apartment, sharing a private dinner on his terrace. His hand on the small of her back as they walked through a hotel lobby. The headlines were brutal. Park Air's latest acquisition. American woman caught in billionaire's orbit. Blood debt or corporate strategy. Park Ji-hun's unusual new companion. From medical sales to CEO's arm. Amara Williams' meteoric rise. Amara's phone exploded with notifications. Former colleagues sharing the articles with thinly veiled judgments. Old friends suddenly reaching out after years of silence. Her supervisor requesting an urgent meeting about conflict of interest concerns. Worst were the comments sections she couldn't stop herself from reading. Speculation about what attracted a Korean billionaire to a Black American woman. Bets on how long before he tired of her. Cruel assessments comparing her to the polished socialites Ji-hun had previously been linked to, with undercurrents of both. Racism and sexism barely disguised as cultural concern. She was sitting in numb shock in her hotel room when there was a knock at the door. She expected Ji-hun, prepared another argument. Instead, she found a severe-looking older woman in expensive traditional hanbok, flanked by two younger women in business attire. "Amara Williams," she said, not a question. "I am Park Sunja, Ji-hun's mother." The blood drained from Amara's face. She'd seen her in photographs. The matriarch of the Park family, known for her philanthropic work and iron control over family matters. "May we come in?" she asked in a tone that indicated refusal wasn't an option. For the next hour, Amara sat across from 3 generations of Park women as they explained, in excruciatingly polite terms, why a relationship between Ji-hun and herself was impossible. "My son has responsibilities beyond his personal desires," Mrs. Park said, pouring tea with practiced grace. "The company employs thousands. Our family foundations support dozens of causes. His choice of partner impacts countless lives." "I've never asked to be his partner," Amara said, finding her voice at last. "Yet you accepted his gifts, his job offer, his attention." Her gaze was unflinching. A woman from a different culture should understand the complexities more clearly. Different culture? Heat rushed to Amara's face. "You grew up in America, worlds away from our traditions and expectations. Your family, while respectable educators, cannot understand the pressures of our business culture." She recited the facts of Amara's life like reading a disappointing resume. "We investigate anyone who comes near our family." Shame and rage warred within Amara. Shame at having her life's details laid bare as deficiencies. Rage at the casual prejudice beneath the woman's polite words. "If you truly care for my son, Mrs. Park continued, setting down her teacup with a definitive click, "you will remove yourself from his life before you damage his reputation beyond repair." After they left, Amara sat motionless, tea cooling untouched before her. Then she packed her bags, left her resignation letter at the front desk, and booked the first commercial flight back to New York. This story is about to take an unexpected turn. If you're invested in Amara and Ji-hun's journey, make sure you've liked and subscribed. Leave a comment with your prediction about what happens next. For 3 weeks, Amara existed in a fog of anger and hurt. She returned to her previous company, accepting whatever assignments kept her farthest from Seoul. She changed her phone number, blocked Ji-hun's email, and told the doorman at her building to refuse any deliveries from him. Each morning, she unpinned the diamond airplane from wherever she'd irrationally attached it the night before. Her blazer, her purse, once even her pajamas, and placed it in a drawer, promising herself she'd pawn it soon. Each evening, she retrieved it again, turning it over in her hands as though it might contain answers to questions she couldn't articulate. Amara's mother noticed the change in her. "You have that look," she said one evening as they shared dinner in her small apartment. "Like someone cut out a piece of you." "It's nothing," Amara insisted. "Just work stress." Her mother gave her the look that had intimidated her since childhood. "I raised you better than to lie to my face. This is about a man." Amara broke then, spilling the entire story. The transfusion, the gifts, the whirlwind romance, the crushing end. Her mother listened without interruption, her hands folded in her lap. "So you ran away," she said when Amara finished. "I didn't run away," Amara protested. "I faced reality." "Whose reality? Yours? His mother's." She shook her head. "The daughter I raised doesn't let other people define her limitations. This isn't about limitations. It's about worlds that don't mix. If your blood can flow in his veins, your worlds are already mixed." She reached for Amara's hand. "The question is whether you're brave enough to fight for what that means." That night, After returning to her empty apartment, Amara finally did something she'd been avoiding. She researched Ji-hun Park properly. Not the tabloid stories, but his actual work. What she found shook her to her core. Skyline Technologies' new medical division wasn't just developing better transfusion equipment. They were pioneering treatments for the exact blood disorder Ji-hun suffered from, treatments that could help thousands with similar conditions. The project had been in development for years, since shortly after he was first diagnosed. Moreover, buried in a press release from the previous week was a detail the gossip columns had overlooked: a new scholarship foundation for Black and Brown students entering hematology research. Its name? The Amara Williams Future Healers Fund. As she stared at her name on the corporate website, trying to process what it meant, breaking news alerts began flooding her phone. Ji-hun Park had collapsed during a product demonstration. His condition was critical. He had been rushed to Seoul National University Hospital. Amara didn't remember deciding to go. One moment she was in her apartment. The next she was in a taxi to JFK, booking a flight to Seoul, clutching the diamond pin so tightly it cut into her palm. At the hospital, chaos reigned. Reporters crowded the entrance. Security guards blocked access. Corporate representatives gave measured statements about temporary health concerns and routine treatments. She pushed through the crowd, still in her business attire from earlier meetings, heading for the private wing where she knew someone of his status would be treated. A security guard blocked her path. "Family only," he said firmly. "I'm his blood donor," Amara tried, desperation making her reckless. "I'm AB negative. He needs me." The guard's expression didn't change. "We've heard every excuse today, miss. Please step back." As she was being escorted toward the exit, she heard a familiar voice. "She's lying." Chong Ho-yoon stood by the nurse's station, immaculate despite the late hour. "She's not here to help. She's here for publicity, to strengthen her claim on him now that he's vulnerable." "That's not true," Amara protested. But the security guards were already tightening their grip on her arms. "Mr. Park's condition is stabilized," Chong Ho continued loudly enough for nearby reporters to hear. "No donors are required. Miss Williams is simply capitalizing on her 15 minutes of fame." Something snapped inside Amara, the last thread of propriety, of acceptance that people like her should know their place. "You're going to let him die to protect your business interests?" she demanded, voice rising. "Is that how little his life means to you?" Chong Ho's eyes narrowed. "Remove her," he instructed the guards. What happened next was a blur of adrenaline and instinct. Amara twisted away from the guards, dashed down a service corridor she'd noticed earlier, and used her years of navigating hospitals as a medical sales rep to find another path. Years of being the only Black woman in countless professional spaces had taught her to be resourceful when doors closed in her face. She found Ji-hun's room by following the cluster of serious-looking men in suits stationed outside a private suite. She waited until a nurse emerged, then slipped inside during the momentary distraction of shift change. The room was dimly lit, machines beeping steadily. Ji-hun lay connected to various monitors, his normally vital presence diminished by illness and medical apparatus. His skin had that same gray pallor she remembered from the airplane. Beside his bed sat a woman Amara recognized as his sister from her research. She looked up in alarm as Amara entered. "Please," Amara said before she could call security. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I just need to know he's okay." The woman studied her for a long moment. "You're her," she said finally. "The American woman." Amara nodded, bracing for another Park family rejection. Instead, Ji-hun's sister gestured to the chair on the opposite side of the bed. "He's been asking for you. When he's conscious." Hesitantly, Amara approached, taking Ji-hun's hand in hers. It was cooler than she remembered, the strong fingers now limp. "What happened?" she asked. "His condition worsened suddenly." His sister rubbed her eyes, clearly exhausted. "The doctors say he needs another transfusion, but his body has been rejecting standard treatments." "I'm AB negative," Amara said. "Like him, I can donate again." The sister looked at her with new interest. "You already did once. On the plane." "Yes. And his body accepted it without complications." Amara nodded, not understanding the significance. Wait here, Ji-hun's sister said, standing abruptly. Don't leave his side. While she was gone, Amara studied Ji-hun's face in repose. The sharp features softened in unconsciousness, looking younger, more vulnerable. She thought about his mother's words, about the impossibility of their worlds merging. Yet here they were in the most fundamental way possible, her blood literally compatible with his when others were not. I should have stayed, she whispered, stroking his hair back from his forehead. I should have let you explain. I was just so angry. Not at you, but at a world that saw me as beneath you, that couldn't imagine what you might see in me beyond my usefulness. His sister returned with a doctor and 2 nurses, who eyed Amara with undisguised curiosity. You understand this is highly irregular, the doctor said as the nurses began preparing equipment. Most worthwhile things are, Amara replied, echoing Ji-hun's words from what felt like a lifetime ago. For the second time, she watched her blood flow into Ji-hun Park's veins. But this time she understood the weight of it, not just the medical necessity but the symbolism. 2 people from different worlds, connected at the most elemental level. As the transfusion progressed, his sister spoke quietly. He created that scholarship in your name the day after you disappeared. Said that even if you never wanted to see him again, your actions should be honored. Amara swallowed hard against the emotion rising in her throat. The notebooks by his bed, the sister continued, gesturing to a stack of leather-bound journals. They're full of designs inspired by your conversations. Medical devices for underserved communities. Partnerships with hospitals in Detroit. He's been obsessed with making your vision reality since he met you. With her permission, Amara paged through one of the notebooks while the transfusion continued. Ji-hun's precise handwriting filled the margins around detailed technical drawings. She recognized ideas she'd mentioned casually during their meetings, problems she'd encountered in her work, improvements she'd wished for. He'd captured them all, expanded them, engineered solutions. He sees you, his sister said simply. Not many people truly see him either. Ji-hun's monitors beeped with increased activity. His eyelids fluttered, then opened. Confusion gave way to recognition as his gaze found Amara. Amara, he whispered, voice hoarse. You're here. I'm here, she confirmed, tears finally spilling over. And you're stealing my blood again. A weak smile touched his lips. Old habits. His sister discreetly left as Ji-hun became more alert, giving them privacy that would have been unthinkable with his mother. You disappeared, he said, fingers tightening around hers. I looked everywhere. Your mother found me first, Amara admitted. She made a compelling case for why I should remove myself from your life. Anger flashed in his eyes. She had no right. She had a mother's right to protect her son, Amara said, surprising herself by defending the woman. She saw me as a threat to everything you've built. You're not a threat. You're the reason. He struggled to sit up, wincing with the effort. Amara, the condition I have, it's why I built the medical division. The technology wasn't just business. It was survival. When you saved me on that plane, when your blood worked when others hadn't, it accelerated everything. So Chong-ho was right, she said, the old hurt resurfacing. I was useful for your business. Chong-ho. Ji-hun's monitor beeped in warning as his pulse quickened. Chong-ho has been trying to steal my research for months. The technology isn't just valuable. It's personal to me. He knows that. He blocked me from reaching you, Amara said. Called me a publicity seeker. He's been feeding information to the tabloids, Ji-hun confirmed. Trying to create exactly the scandal that would drive you away. I kept my distance to protect you from the attention, which played right into his hands. The pieces aligned with sickening clarity. The leaked photos, the cruel headlines, all carefully timed to create maximum damage. Our connection was never about status or obligation, Ji-hun said, reaching up to touch her face. It was about finding someone who sees me. Not the CEO, not the chaebol heir, but the man who fears flying and has terrible taste in movies and falls asleep reading technical manuals. Amara laughed through her tears. You do have terrible taste in movies. Stay, he whispered. Not as my employee or my nurse or my publicity asset. Just stay. We'll figure out the rest. In that sterile hospital room, with her blood once again flowing into his veins, Amara made the choice her mother had accused her of avoiding, to fight for a connection that defied conventional boundaries, to believe that worlds could merge when the people inhabiting them cared enough to build bridges. The fallout came swiftly. Chang-ho was removed from Skyline's board when evidence emerged of his industrial espionage. Ji-hun's mother didn't soften overnight, but seeing her son's health improve with Amara's blood, literally and figuratively, tempered her opposition to her presence. Amara didn't abandon her career, though she did accept a new position heading Skyline's Community Outreach Division, helping implement medical technologies in underserved communities worldwide. She still traveled frequently, unwilling to completely surrender the freedom of crossing cultural boundaries that had defined her career. Ji-hun focused on recovery, delegating more operational control to trusted executives, while he prioritized the medical technology that had begun as his personal salvation and evolved into a mission that would help thousands with similar conditions. They maintained homes in both Seoul and New York, neither willing to completely abandon their roots. The diamond airplane pin became Amara's constant accessory, while Ji-hun carried a specially designed pendant containing a vial of her blood type. Pragmatic romance at its finest. 1 year after his collapse, they hosted their first joint project, a blood drive at Harlem Hospital Center. As donors arrived, they found not the sterile efficiency typical of such events, but an atmosphere of celebration. Each person who offered their blood received a small airplane pin, cubic zirconia, not diamond, and a card explaining how a single donation at 35,000 feet had cascaded into a movement. Ji-hun stood beside Amara, their fingers intertwined as they greeted participants. The contrast between them remained, his reserved demeanor and her easy smile, his Korean heritage and her Black American identity, but it no longer seemed like a chasm too wide to cross. "Did you ever imagine this?" he asked quietly as they watched the donation center fill with people. "That day on the plane when they asked for AB-negative blood?" Amara shook her head. "I just saw someone who needed help, and I just saw darkness, until I opened my eyes to find you. Some connections are truly written in blood." If this story touched you, please hit like, share with someone who would appreciate it, and subscribe for more incredible true stories of fate and connection. Don't forget to comment below if you've ever had a chance encounter that changed your life forever. And remember, consider becoming a blood donor. You never know whose life you might save.